Okay, in this video we're going to be solving rational equations, and we have two methods of doing this. Method number one is to use proportions. To use proportions, we're going to condense into a proportion, then we're going to cross multiply to solve. Step number two, using the LCD, is probably the most popular method. We're going to multiply each side of the equation by the least common denominator, and then we're going to solve the resulting equations. Now, since we're solving rational equations, remember that we have to remember our domain restrictions. Like with this first problem, we know that x couldn't be 6, x couldn't be 0, because that would make some denominators equal to 0, so be really careful with that. All right, let's go ahead and start working some problems. Number one, now we're going to obviously solve this with proportions because it already is a proportion. It's a fraction equal to a fraction. So what we're going to do, we're going to get rid of our x minus 6. We're going to move it over to the other side by multiplying. So now we have 4 times x minus 6. We're going to get rid of the 7 by moving it up here by multiplying. So now we have 7x. And now it's just a linear equation. You have 7x equals 4x minus 24. Move the 4x over by subtracting. You now have 3x is negative 24. Divide by 3 and you get x is negative 8. Number two, again, we have a proportion. Move we'll start with a 2a plus 1, move it up by multiplying. Now, if you would like to go ahead and distribute as you multiply, it'll save you a step, so that'd be 6a plus 3. Move the a minus 8 by multiplying, that'll be 7a minus 56. Move all your a's to the same side. We'll move this one by subtracting. That leaves you with 1a. Move the minus 56 by adding, and you get 59. So a would be 59. And again, remember your domain restrictions. Make sure you go back and can I plug in 59 here and not have a problem? And that would be yes. And I should have done the same thing on the first. And we don't have any problems with negative 8 on the first one either. Again, number three, we're going to solve it using proportions. Move the r minus 1 by multiplying. 4 times r minus 1 will be a 4r minus 4. Move the r by multiplying up here, and you get r squared. Now we're dealing with a quadratic equation because you have the r squared. So let's move everything to the same side. Move the 4r by change it to minus 4r. Move minus 4 by adding 4, and it's equal to 0 now. Best method for solving a quadratic equation would be by factoring. So r times r is r squared. Adds, multiplies is a negative 2 and a negative 2. So therefore, set each equal to 0, and you get r equals 2, and that solution would have a multiplicity of 2. Go back and make sure that r equals 2 is going to be okay for the bottom, and plugging in 2 will not be any issue at all. Number 4. Let's move our m minus 2 by multiplying, and I'm going to go ahead and write this m plus 3 times m minus 2, just to remind you that we do have to distribute when we multiply that out. Move the 3. Again, by multiplying, 3 times 8 gives you a 24. Now, we do have to FOIL. M times both of them, m times m would be m squared. M times negative 2 is a negative 2m. 3 times both would be a positive 3m, and a minus 6 equals 24. Let's combine our like terms. Gives you m squared minus or plus 1m. And let's go ahead, since it is quadratic, we're going to have to move this 24 over anyway. Let's go ahead and subtract 24 to save ourselves a step, and that's what we get. Two sets of parentheses. Let's try to solve this quadratic by factoring. M times m is m squared. A positive 6 and a negative 5 gives you the 1 and negative 30. So set each factor equal to 0 gives me an m equals a negative 6, or m possibly could be 5. Just making sure with the bottoms, this is the only domain restriction that you're going to have. M can't be 2, so therefore negative 6 and positive 5 should both be fine. Number 5. Again, move your y plus 5 by distributing times the y. That'd be y squared plus 5y. Move the 3 by distributing here. That'd be a 3y plus 24. Move everything to the same side since it's quadratic. Subtract your 3y gives you a 2y. Subtract 24 gives you a minus 24 equals 0. Two sets of parentheses equals 0. So you have y times itself. Adds, multiplies is a positive 6 and a negative 4. So therefore y is either negative 6 or y is equal to positive 4. And before we circle those, let's see. If they both will be fine, the only domain restriction would be a -5, so therefore both of those solutions should be okay. Number 6. Okay, we've got to get rid of x plus 4 by multiplying, so we'll have 2x minus 3 times x plus 4. And we will get rid of 2 by multiplying up here, and that gives us a 6. Distribute your 2x, that'll be 2x squared plus 8x. Distribute your -3 gives you -3x minus 12. Combine all your like terms, 2x squared, 8x minus 3x is a 5x. And again, let's go ahead and move that 6 over and gives us minus 18 equals 0. This will be a slip and slide factoring problem, so therefore let's come over to the side and do that. That'll be x squared plus 5x minus 36 equals 0. Or we don't have to do the equal 0, we're just trying to factor this. Two sets of parentheses, x times x, adds, multiplies is a positive 9 and a -4. We slip the 2, so now let's divide by it. This doesn't divide or reduce, so therefore move it back up front, slide it to the front. This will reduce, so you get x minus 2. So therefore, that's my factors. And we could go ahead and just set it equal to 0 over here if you would like to. Set each factor equal to 0, 2x plus 9 equals 0, or x minus 2 is equal to 0, which gives me, let's subtract 9 and divide by 2, or add 2, and there's our two solutions. The only restriction right here would be a -4, so both of those answers will be fine. Number 7, now we've got our other method now. Now, I could go ahead and show you that we could solve this the same way. I could multiply top and bottom here by n, multiply top and bottom here by 3, and get a common denominator. And you would have 4n minus 21 over 3n is equal to 1 over 6. And you could actually solve these identical to the last problems. The other method is to multiply everything. Okay, go through and look at all your bottoms and ask yourself, what is my least common denominator? What's a value that I could change all three of these into? The 3 and the 6, I could turn those both into 6. I have an n here, so I could place an n on all these. So every one of these could be turned into a 6n. So what we're going to do, we're going to take our entire equation and we're going to multiply everything times 6n. And look what happens when we do this. When I do 4 over 3 times 6n. If we used a correct common denominator, the bottoms should always cancel. 3 cancels with 6 and leaves you with a 2. So there I have 4 times 2n, which would give us an 8n. When I do 7 or a -7 over n times 6n. If I did it correctly, again, the bottoms should cancel with something on top. And it leaves me with a 7 times a 6, which is going to be, don't forget that negative sign there, a minus 42 equals, let's try our third one. When I do 1 over 6 times my 6n, 6's cancels and leaves me with just the n. So now what I've done is I completely removed my denominators. So now solve it like normal. Let's move our 8 in. I have -42. We move minus or 8 in by doing minus 8 in. That gives me -7n. So therefore divide by -7 and you get n is 6. Look for any domain restrictions. Here's my only place I might have one. N can't be 0. So therefore 6 is going to be fine. Next problem. And again, on these, sometimes it might be easier to do solve them as a proportion, to change all these to a proportion. Or again, I'm going to do this if I use my common denominators. I can change all three of these bottoms into a 2k. The reason I know that, I can multiply this by 2, I can multiply this by k, and I can multiply this by 2, and they're all three turned into 2k's. So let's take and multiply all three fractions here times that 2k. There, the k's will cancel and leaves me with just the 6. When I do 1 over 2 times the 2k, the 2's cancel and leaves me with just the k. So make sure you bring down that minus sign, equals, when I multiply 12 over k times 2k, the k's cancel and leaves me with 12 times 2, which is 24. So I have 6 minus k equals 24. Now anytime I have a minus k, I like to move it and then move my number to the other side. and that gives me a positive k when I move it, and 6 minus 24 is a negative 18, and that's your answer. Okay, the next one, number 9. You want to factor these before you start multiplying by common denominators. So the p minus 2 is already in factored form, so I'm going to put it in parentheses, plus 2 over 1. Make sure you write it as a fraction just to remind yourself. The 8 over p squared minus 4, that's difference of squares. Difference of squares will always factor into conjugates. So you have plus minus, p times itself, and 2 times itself. So my common denominator here, I can multiply top and bottom here by p plus 2. I can multiply top and bottom here by p plus 2, p minus 2, and then that one's already p plus 2, p minus 2. So my common denominator is going to be that p plus 2, p minus 2. So I'm going to do this one a little bit different. I'm not going to rewrite every one of them. I'm just going to show you that you could come over here. There's your common denominator. Now let's go through. When I multiply my first term by the common denominator, my p minus 2 would cancel with my p minus 2. It would leave me with the p that's on top and this p plus 2. Now I'm going to erase that. I'm going to erase my marks, and I'm left with plus. The second one, nothing. I've only got a 1 on bottom, so really not necessary. But you're going to be left with everything on the outside, the p plus 2 and the p minus 2. Equals. Now here, p plus 2 cancels and p minus 2 cancels and leaves you with just the 8. And notice, since I chose the common denominator that I did, every bottom on every one of them canceled. And that's the reason you have to include something that's going to cancel with everything that's on the bottom, or it's going to be pointless. We're trying to completely remove bottoms. So here I have p times p plus 2, which would be p squared plus 2p. Now we just have a basic equation. Plus, now this is p squared minus 4. Now I got to multiply that by 2. That'd be 2p squared minus 8, and that's equal to 8. Let's move all of our, that's equal to 8, not 0. Let's move everything to the same side. P squared and 2p squared, combine those gives me 3p squared. Plus 2p, and I can go ahead and move that 8 over, it gives me minus 16. This is going to be a slip and slide method, so that'll be p squared plus 2p minus 3 times 16 is 48. 2 sets of parentheses, p times p, adds, multiplies is a positive 8, negative 6. We slipped the 3, so now let's divide by it, and we can just rewrite it right here below. That's going to be now p plus 8 over 3 does not reduce, and it does not divide, so therefore slide the 3 back to the front. That'd be 3p plus 8. P minus 6 over 3 reduces to 2. Set both factors equal to 0. Move your 8, divide by 3 will be a negative 8 divided by 3 then. And then move the minus 2 over by adding 2, and there's your 2 answers. Check for any domain restrictions. P can't be 2, and p can't be negative 2 because of the p plus 2. However, 2 is one of our solutions, so therefore p cannot be 2. Let's X that out. So the only answer that you have is going to be the negative 8/3. The next one. Again, we always factor first. We have 13 over, factor out the 3, you're left with a w minus 1. Second term, you have 1 over w minus 1 will not factor, equals w over 9. Common denominator. Let's look at our monomials first, a 3 and a 9. The least common denominator there would be a 9. And then you need a w minus 1. And the lowest power of that, which would be w minus 1 to the first. So therefore, we could change all of our denominators into 9 times w minus 1. Here you'd multiply by w minus 1. Here you'd multiply by a 3. And here you'd multiply by a 9. So that's our least common denominator. Let's go ahead and cancel anything that will. First term, w minus 1's cancel. The 3 cancels with a 9 and leaves me with a 3 up here. So I'm left with a 13 and a 3. So that term turns into a 39. Minus. And again, let's start over and do the same thing for my second. Oops, lost my 3. Do the exact same thing for the second term. Let me erase all my marks from the first one. And you don't have to do this. If you can do it in your head, that'll be perfectly fine. Second term, w minus 1s is all that'll cancel. And it leaves me with a 1 and a 9, or a negative 1 if you want to think of it as that. Negative 1 times 9 is a negative 9. Now my third term, I lost my 9. The 9 cancels with a 9 and leaves you with a w and a w minus 1. And if you would like to go ahead and distribute that, that'd be w squared minus w. So you have 39 minus 9, which is 30 equals w squared minus w. Since it's quadratic, move everything to the same side. I'm going to move it to the right since that's a positive w squared. Move 30 by turning it to a minus 30. Two sets of parentheses. W times itself, adds, multiplies is a negative 6 and a positive 5. Set each equal to 0, and you'll get W is either equal to 6 or W will be negative 5. Check for any domain restrictions. The only restriction is going to be W cannot be 1, so therefore both of those answers will be fine. Number 11. 3 terms, and it's going to be kind of evident what your common denominator is going to be because it's already factored. Your common denominator is going to be in x plus 3. So let's multiply all 3 terms by x plus 3. When you multiply your first term by x plus 3, the x plus 3's will cancel, and it will leave you with just the x plus 6 on top. Equals. When you multiply your second term by the x plus 3, nothing cancels, and it leaves you with a 2 and an x plus 3. Minus, when you multiply your third term by x plus 3's, the x plus 3's will cancel. Now, here's where a lot of people will miss this. This minus, when you go to minus this top, you're going to minus the whole top, not just part of the top. So this whole fraction is being subtracted, so make sure you put this top in parentheses as you lose that denominator. So now we have, let me scroll up a little bit, x plus 6 equals 2x plus 6 minus 5x minus 12. And that right there is what would get a lot of people because they would lose that minus sign if they didn't put that in parentheses. Now with this problem, we're actually dealing with a linear equation. We have no x squared terms, so we can go ahead and move everything to the same side. But first, let's go ahead and combine some like terms. The 2x minus 5x is a negative 3x. 6 minus 12 is a negative 6. Now let's move our x's to the left. Minus 3, let's add 3. It gives me 4x. Plus 6, let's subtract 6. Gives me a negative 12. So therefore, x is negative 3. Let's check for restrictions. The only restriction that I have is x can't be negative 3. So therefore, since that's the only answer I got, that's not an answer. So therefore, this one has no answers. There is no solution to this equation. Number 12. Always factor before you begin. So 3c minus 2 on top. You don't really have to worry about factoring the tops, but you have a c times c minus 4 on that denominator equals c over c minus 4 will not factor. And you have minus 1 over 1. So your common denominator, check your monomial. C is the only power of c, so therefore we're going to leave it. And then I need a c minus 4 to the first, so therefore c minus 4 to the first. And then you could put a 1 with it, but you really don't need to. So there's your common denominator. When you multiply your first term by c times c minus 4, everything cancels and leaves you with just the top, so 3c minus 2. Let's erase those. Second term, when you multiply your second term by equals c minus 4's, the c minus 4's cancel and leaves you with a c that's on top and a c that's out here, which is a c to the second. Let me erase that. And now when I multiply my third term by it, nothing cancels. You have the 1 on bottom, and then 1 times that stuff on top is a negative c times c minus 4. Now, make sure, this is the reason I didn't have to put brackets around this, is because I'm about to distribute that c. If you go ahead and include that minus as you distribute it, that'll be the same as putting parentheses around it. So you have 3c minus 2 equals c squared. Negative c times c would be negative c squared, and a negative c times a negative 4 is a positive 4c. Now this is kind of nice because since those cancel, we no longer have a quadratic equation. It's now linear. Let's move our 3c over here by doing minus 3c. So you have negative 2 is equal to 4 minus 3 is 1c. So my only answer is negative 2. Now let's go up here and look for restrictions. C can't be 0 or C can't be 4. C can't be 4 here, so therefore negative 2 will be perfectly fine.